Hi, this is Lifeless Lisa again here, and today we're going to talk about pizza. We're going to talk about pizza and how it fits into a Nutrilicious lifestyle. Because when people are on diets, they're worried about their weight, they're worried about health. They across the board declare that pizza is just not healthy for you, and it's completely wrong. You cannot determine whether a food is healthy or not healthy if you don't even know what's in it. When you make things at home, you can decide what is in it, and you can use quality ingredients, things that are whole grain, fresh vegetables and fruits or whatever. You can determine that pizza becomes a healthy dish instead of some junk you found at some carryout. So today I also want to let you know that making pizza at home is incredibly easy. You would not believe. I usually make a nice whole grain pizza crust. It's thin and crunchy. And I'm not kidding you, it only takes about 10 minutes or so to prepare. It takes a little bit more time for it to rise, but then once it rises, you're ready to go. I normally roll out my pizza dough like a pie crust. I roll out my pizza dough like a pie crust, and then I place it on a pizza paddle. Because of the fact that I like mine nice and crispy, I have to use it pizza stone, which gets heated to about 500 degrees, which means you cannot handle it. That means, so that way I can use this pizza stone to slide the pizza into the 500 degree oven. Let's begin. This is 2 cups of white whole wheat pastry flour and 2 cups of white all-purpose flour. And I usually take my whisk and mix it around so that it's evenly distributed and not sort of, patchy here and there. Now I'm going to also add 2 teaspoons of salt. One teaspoon of sugar, and a package of yeast. And I like this particular one, Fleischmann's pizza crust yeast. And it says that you can use it for whole grain or just white. Either way, it works really well. So I put the whole package in here. Now, sometimes people put this into the water, but the problem with that here is that this amount of water, which is 1.5 cups, is not a specific amount. It varies from time to time. So I'm just going to put this yeast on in here with the flour, because if I don't use all the water, I would be throwing away some of the yeast, and we don't want to do that. We want to have all the yeast in here. Okay, that seems like it's well incorporated. And now I'm going to add 2.5 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. Okay. Now, here comes the difficult part. I'm going to add the water. Now, this is an exercise in sensuality because, like I said, this is not the exact amount of water that you would use, and you have to go by how it looks and how it feels to determine how much water goes in it. So I add a little at a time. I'm going to try to incorporate this olive oil just a little bit with my hand, and then I'll add some water. This might be a little bit hot, so I'm going to cool it down a little. Now you want this to be soft, but you don't want it to fall apart like this. That's not enough water. However, you don't want it to be like gummy, like when you have chewing gum. Now, if you make it a little too wet, you can always add a little flour, but I try not to do that, because then you change the ratio of the ingredients a little too much. And then if you find when you go to roll it out that it's a little too much, you can still just sprinkle a little flour and it'll be fine. So it's not an exact science. You just have to kind of go with your gut. And as you see, it's a little bit gummy here. I'm probably going to add a little bit more flour, but I'm going to wait until after it rises because it might be just fine. Because as you see here, it's not gummy. It's gummy here because this hand has a little more moisture in it. So you kind of play with it. It's not an exact science, and this dough is very forgiving. There's also a little bit more flour in this bowl. I can roll it around and pick up. Yeah, that looks great. So in reality, you'll use somewhere between 1 and 1.5 cups of water, depending on, who knows, the weather, temperature, I don't know. It varies every single time. So you form this into a nice little ball. And I put it right back in here. Now you can just cover this with saran wrap and leave it on your counter. Or if your oven has a proof function, you can put it on proof for about an hour. You'll see it rise and puff up, and then you know it's ready. Okay, it's equally easy to make your own delicious sauce for the pizza. It means that instead of using store-bought sauce, it doesn't have as much sodium, may not have as much fat, and any other crazy fried ingredients that they add to stuff that doesn't need to be added. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to, on medium heat in a saucepan, we're going to heat some olive oil. We're going to heat the olive oil, and then you're going to take lots of garlic. This is about 4 cloves or so, fresh garlic, minced. And what we're going to do is we're going to distribute the garlic flavor in the oil. So what I'm saying is that don't toast the garlic, but we want to heat the garlic so that the garlic flavor becomes, the oil with the garlic in it becomes a transporter of the flavor into the sauce. So I'm waiting for this to heat up. Add a little more oil. Now this is not something you can walk away from. You must stand here and watch it because again, you don't want the garlic to toast. You just want the flavor to become distributed throughout this olive oil. So I like to mash it with my spoon a little bit and turn this heat down a little. A lot. Can you smell that? Smell-o-vision. I'm going to add just a little more olive oil. Not too much. Okay, I see it starting to get a little golden, and that's about it because I don't want it toasted. So I'm going to reduce the heat just a tiny bit, and I'm going to add some crushed tomatoes in puree. I use the organic. I don't want salt or anything like that added. Just pour it right in. Now I'm going to let this simmer for about 15-20 minutes because it seems like once it simmers, the sweetness of the tomatoes comes out. Some people like to add a little bit of sugar to the sauce. I generally don't, just depending. But after you simmer it for about 15 minutes, you want to try the sauce and see if you would like for it to be a little bit sweeter or not. And that's when you decide whether you want to add sugar. Add a little fresh black pepper. A lot. Pepper is so delicious in this. And this is a black pepper and European blend. And I have some Italian herb mix. You can use anything. You can use oregano, you can use another Italian herb mix. You know, this is my favorite, Penzeys. So you can just add however much to taste. It doesn't really matter. Like a lot. And you stir it in. And then I'm going to cover this and I'm going to let it simmer on a low heat for about 15-20 minutes. So I think that this sauce is done right now. It's been in here for about 20 minutes, simmering on a very low heat. And what I'll do is I'm just going to turn this off and let it cool, because I don't like to put it on the dough hot because it'll make it soggy. So just put it in a bowl and let it cool before I put it on the dough. The cool thing about this sauce is that you can just put it in a plastic container, you can put it in the freezer, you can put it in the refrigerator, and you can, you know, if you've made your dough ahead of time, you can have pizza homemade on a work night. The dough should be pretty much finished rising by now also. That's looking pretty good. As you can see, it's significantly larger than it was. Now, this recipe is actually 2 pieces of dough. So I make 2 pizzas from that one recipe. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll do this recipe and then I'll cut it in half and I'll wrap one blob of dough in saran wrap and leave it in the refrigerator. As far as I know, it'll stay good for about 10 days. I wouldn't leave it in much longer than that. So on a weeknight, you can just pull out your dough from the refrigerator, let it get to room temperature before you try to roll it out, because otherwise it'll just snap back. And voila, you got pizza on a weeknight. And to add to the whole Nutriliciousness of this dish, I have sauteed some delicious peppers and zucchini and some, what is that? Asparagus, mushrooms, and caramelized shallots, which would make for a fantastic weekend dinner with a nice glass of red wine.